The concept of Amazonian warriors fighting in battles, especially against opponents with modern weapons, will always pique the interest of the audience, regardless of the actual quality of the film in question. The problem with The Woman King is that it's supposed to be a serious and poignant historical drama about the fight against slavery and colonialism in Africa, but because it's so monumentally historically inaccurate, it makes the movie feel cheap, hollow, and completely toneless. The good guys in the film are the Dahomey tribe. They are portrayed as righteous and kind people. They are warriors that have honor and they fight for their freedom, not only against other African tribes, but freedom from European colonialism. But here's the thing, none of that is true. In reality, the Dahomey tribe did exist in Africa, but their primary source of income came from the slave trade. The film is set in 1823. At that time, slavery was banned throughout Europe and in the surrounding region, and that included Africa as well. But the Dahomey tribe was making so much money from selling slaves that they didn't want to quit. So the French sent an army to stop them from selling slaves, and that's how we got the war between the Dahomey and the French, which the Dahomey were just crushed. And they weren't crushed because the French had modern weapons, and the Dahomey was this primitive tribe with spears and swords. Oh no, the Dahomey were so rich that they sold or exchanged slaves for guns. But they never really trained with them, so in both wars with the French in 1890 and in 1892, they lost completely and was colonized by the French. And the Dahomey were not only slavers that raided villages in the night and took away and sold people, but they were also cannibals. Yeah, that's right. The real Dahomey, the people who are the heroes in The Woman King, ate people, and the film whitewashes their part in the slave trade and wants to make them the good guys instead. But in reality, The Woman King is all about this African Amazonian-like warrior woman called the Agogi. Now, historically, that was indeed a thing. For about 2 centuries, the Dahomey tribe did have warrior women that were celibate, weren't allowed to marry, and basically spend their time training and fighting. We see a lot of action scenes in The Woman King, fierce warrior women going against men twice their size. Now, if you follow this channel, you should know by now that I'm a big action guy. I love good choreographed fight scenes. They're a joy to watch. And The Woman King has plenty of good choreographed fight scenes, with tons of martial arts in them. Ordinarily, I should have loved this film, but here's the thing. The fight scenes in The Woman King are too good. They don't belong in the historical period that the film is set in. Instead, the battles and the action scenes resemble a Marvel movie or some kind of fantasy film, and they have little to do with the actual manner of combat of the Dahomey or any other African tribe in the surrounding region at that time. I mean, come on, having moves from judo and classical kung fu as part of your fight choreography when your movie is set in 1823 in Africa, now that's jarring to say the least. Since this is a historical film, the battles should at least have the authenticity of the period. In the first scene of the movie, we see a band of these warrior women surprise some guards in an African village at night, massacre them with fantastical martial arts prowess and ability, then they go on to raid the village and rescue the prisoners, mostly women and children that were kidnapped. First off, if this was a Marvel film or some kind of kung fu movie, I would be completely fine with these women kicking ass. There are certain movie tropes that you just accept and move on, and that's completely fine. But because The Woman King is supposed to be a historical film, showing women easily defeating men in battle that are twice their size doesn't really work here. And I say it again, because the martial arts moves they use seem so out of place, and because they defeat most of their opponents so effortlessly, The Woman King loses all credibility right from the first scene as a historical film. And furthermore, I could feel how bad history-wise this film would be when I heard the voiceover at the start of the movie telling us all about the evil of slavery. Now, that's problematic because it uses a modern perspective on things that the characters at the time simply wouldn't have. Slavery is evil, of course, but for thousands of years, slavery was pretty much the norm. The tribes of the region would have viewed it as such and wouldn't call it evil. And since we know that the Dahomey tribe was a slaver tribe themselves, it sounds a bit disingenuous for them to be talking about the evil of slavery. But let's go back to the actual historical events for a moment. The Dahomey had lots of women warriors, but did they fight? Did they go to battle, you might ask? Yeah, they did, but not by using swords or spears or any kind of martial arts moves. The Dahomey were very wealthy, so their women warriors fought primarily with guns. In the beginning they had bows, but as the tribe started to become more wealthy, they switched to firearms. Also, they had a kind of sword with them that resembled a longer machete, but that was mostly used to cut off the limbs of prisoners of war, either to terrorize other prisoners or just because they were cannibals and used the dismembered limbs in their cannibalistic rituals. It makes much more sense to send women in battle if they have guns and they are fighting some poor tribe that primarily uses spears and swords. The firearms gives them a clear advantage, and they don't have to rely on hand-to-hand combat when fighting stronger opponents, which of course would put them in a clear disadvantage. Historical accuracy isn't really a thing in this movie. There's parts to it that the hypocrisy of the Dahomey reaches critical mass, the slavers talking about honor and decency and freedom. There is even a subplot where one of the main characters tried to convince the king of the Dahomey to start trading palm oil instead of slaves, because it's more honorable. In reality, the Dahomey did grow and sold palm oil, but guess who worked the fields? Yep, it was slaves. And the only reason the Dahomey took up palm oil production was because there was a slave embargo that was enforced by the great European powers of the day. So basically the Dahomey didn't really have a choice. But enough about historical accuracy. What about the actual film, you might ask? Is it good or bad? Well, I would say that The Woman King is a bit shit. The main story is a convoluted mess that deals with the Dahomey being in a perpetual conflict with two other slaver tribes in the area, the Oyo and the Mahi. These two tribes make their money by selling slaves to a cartoonishly evil Portuguese slaver that wants to take them back to Brazil and sell them there. This character is probably based on a real historical figure, a Brazilian slaver named Francisco de Souza, and he was actually not an enemy of the Dahomey, but a good friend of them, because he made them so much money selling slaves. The main character of the film is Naui, a teenage farm girl that joins the band of the warrior woman, and gradually throughout the movie she trains and becomes a warrior herself. These warrior women were forbidden to take a husband, so Naui is torn between the celibacy as a warrior and her love for a Brazilian foreigner that she meets by accident, a friend of the Portuguese slaver. Add to that convoluted mess is that the general of the warrior women, Nanisca, halfway around the movie, she finds out that Naui is her long-lost daughter. Early in life, Nanisca was raped and gave birth to a baby girl that was given to an orphanage by one of her friends. The man who raped her is the captain of the tribe of Oyo, basically he's one of the bad guys, and Nanisca has to defeat him in battle for her character to redeem herself in the end. About midway through the movie, during a big battle between the Dahomey tribe and the Oyo, the main character of Naui gets captured and is brought back to the slave market to be sold. Nanisca goes against the orders of her king and runs to save her alongside her warrior women. So they sneak inside the town, free the slaves and start killing the slavers. Naui has already betrayed her oath to her tribe by having sex with her Brazilian boyfriend in his room. Once she realizes the warrior women of the tribe are killing the slavers, she joins the fight and they basically just massacre everyone and come back to their tribe as winners. Now, where do I start with this mess? The soap opera plotline of the long-lost baby, or that we should just accept the fact that the actress playing Nanisca, Viola Davis, a 57-year-old woman, can pull off a fight scene defeating a man twice her size. Spoiler alert, she does defeat him, of course. And the scene is just as ludicrous as you can imagine. Naui and her Brazilian boyfriend is probably the worst on-screen couple I've ever seen. There's really no chemistry between them, and their relationship doesn't really go anywhere. Not only does Naui break her oath of celibacy, which is really a testament of trust and faith to her fellow warrior woman, but leaves the boyfriend by the shore and comes back to her tribe, faces no consequences at all, and everything is just hunky-dory. The pacing of the movie is just terrible. It's bogged down on events that aren't really interesting by themselves. The long training of Naui, the Marvel-style fight scenes, the hypocrisy of freedom coming from the slavers, and all of that makes the experience of watching The Woman King really not all that great. Now, I'm not a historian, but I did a little bit of research for this video. You will find links of my sources in the description. See you in the next video.